Hello, everyone. Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew here. Welcome in. We have such a treat for today. Just look at that title that I've got in the article behind us. Oh, it is gold and it feels good. Let's all come together and do this victory lap because at last someone is saying the thing out loud. Someone who has a bigger platform than even the biggest pagan content creators. Oh, yes, yes. But before we revel in this, I want to give a very special shout out to the Gilded member Druid Foxx of Blackbird's Brew, who also has her own blog called The Druid's Den. She is the one who happened to post this in our current events and politics channel. We call it the smoking room at Blackbird's Brew. And this popped up and she shared it. And thank you, Druid. Thank you very, very much. This is exactly the kind of happy thought that I think most of us will be glad to take into the new year. And honestly, this is one of the beautiful things about having a burgeoning community. When you have people sharing different information from different sources on different topics, it means that we're all kind of combining our resources. We're all getting the benefit of everyone's interest. And Druid, you struck us a home run today. That is for sure. So, if you haven't already subscribed to her blog, I do have a link to it in the description box below, as I do for this particular article that we're just going to go through. So, definitely give Druid some love, and let's see what this has to say. And of course, share your thoughts with me in the live stream. I'll be kind of going back and forth between screens, so I will do my very best to keep track of comments. So. Published December 31st, 2022, 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from foxnews.com. Opinion. Viking virtues can help defeat woke enemies of America. Ta-da! 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 Oh, yes, this is a beautiful, brilliant start because, guys, how long have we all been saying it? How long have all of us, from our little corners of the internet and in conversation with people, have we said, I think a lot of our modern day problems could really benefit from some old fashioned pagan solutions? Yes, someone else has been persuaded of this as well. So the second line on the article reads, virtues that gave Viking strength to explore, trade, and settle are ones Americans will rediscover in 2023. And this article is by a gentleman named Arthur Herman. So you want to see what else he has to say? Because I'm feeling pretty excited about this. Okay, so quick check for comments. Yes, and we got a little love from Marcus. Forever it feels like. Yes, it is. Yes, it has been. But now at least we are starting to bear some fruit. Okay, so article, his first paragraph reads, I would suggest that the key for doing this can be found in the virtues that brought the first Europeans to the shores of North America despite risks and uncertainties, namely the Vikings. The virtues that sustained those intrepid explorers, traders, and settlers in the world's most dangerous waters are precisely the ones Americans will rediscover in 2023. First, the spirit of entrepreneurship, which led the Vikings to venture out and roam around the world and brought Leif Erikson and his family to North America and other Vikings as far as the Black Sea and Baghdad. In a more violent and primitive age, that energy took the form of robbery and pillage, which, let's be honest, that's what everybody did. If we're being honest, that's what literally every civilization on Earth was doing. The only reasons why the Vikings were remembered as particularly brutal and scary is because they were successful and won the battle. But going on. Later, however, it was channeled into an appetite for settlement and trade, making them the original harbingers of globalization, which, whatevs. Okay, going on. In addition, the harsh conditions of their Scandinavian homeland made them the original intrepid pioneers, inured to carving a life for themselves and their families out of bog, ice, and forest. That was the perfect skill set when their Danish, Swedish, Norwegian, and Finnish descendants arrived in this country. The opportunities for entrepreneurship are varied today, but they are still there. All it takes is the willingness to climb into our longships with the crew we trust and row out to the far horizon. This is a very beautiful and very romantic depiction of what the Vikings were, but I think he does have the spirit captured. And hearing from Marcus again about the ancients had it right. Imagine that. I mean, exactly. I mean, let's not forget that we are dealing with people who did not have our advancements in technology, who had to deal with a lot of real world difficulties that we really don't face today, and yet they made it and they explored and they founded civilizations and they expanded their sphere of influence and they did all of these amazing things, and all of us are, are barely too lazy sometimes to even hit a share button on the computer. So I think that's worth reflecting on for sure. Because, I mean, it's one thing to embrace new ideas that we come with the modern era if they prove to be more effective or if they're better in some way or if it has a better result. But when our modern ideas kind of suck and the ancient ideas were much more useful, maybe it's time to go back to tradition. Imagine that. All right, so heading back to the article, he says, second, the instinct of workmanship. The Norwegian American sociologist Thorstein Veblen defined 100 years ago as the human instinct to constantly improve and perfect the things we make that characterized Viking culture when it came to making a ship, a sword, a farm. And boy, isn't that the truth? I mean, they were renowned for a very good reason. Today, it's the instinct to make a technology or app better as a regular workday habit. At a time when we have 7 million prime working age males sitting idle on the sidelines, the heroes of 2023 America will be the men and women at their jobs every day in order to build better lives for themselves and in the process rebuild the nation. Third, commitment to family, community, and nation. Given the harsh conditions in which they chose to live, the Vikings found that solidarity and loyalty to family and community were essential to survival. That is true. That's even truer than ever today when our ties with our ties to family and local communities, what Edmund Burke called life's little platoons, are the perfect antidote to the social distancing and isolation that COVID-19 and lockdowns imposed. Yes, and yes. And guys, what have I been nagging about? What has my colleague Georgia Liberty been nagging about? Our friend Amanda, and all of the other pagans out there. What has the big push really been? It has been fewer and fewer of conversations of who knows the most and, these pissing contests about who has the most and bestest accurate interpretation of ancient history. No. What we've been seeing more and more on pagan channels, at least the ones I'm in contact with, is this desire to take, okay, what are our principles? What did we learn from these stories? Not just what are the stories, what did we take away from them? How is this making us better at everything that we do and how we live our lives? It's all about application and then building that community and saying, maybe, the time for being isolated and in the closet and hidden away and, shaking in our boots for fear someone discovers we're pagan. Maybe that's a bunch of bullshit that we need to really throw out the window. Maybe it's time to proudly be who we are, claim that, and said, I am practicing virtuous principles. So that's what I'm thinking of. Alrighty, so the article goes on. This is what families of Loudoun County, Virginia found out last year when they banded together to push back against the CRT taking over their schools. In 2023, that discovery will spread as we learn these local commitments will be the secure building blocks for restoring the American nation, that by thinking small, we can start to go big. Yes, 1,000 times yes. How often has it been said? But I mean, the reason why, what makes this so significant is that it's someone outside of our little religious sphere that's saying the same thing, that's actually getting it, that's saying, the most important ties are the ones of the people we're actually around. Imagine that. Okay, fourth, meeting all challenges with agility and bold innovation. The Viking response to danger wasn't to run away, but to meet it head on. Instead of the paralysis and passive victimhood imposed by COVID-19 and wokeness, this means our future depends on directing our energies towards bold and proactive solutions to our biggest issues, whether it's illegal immigration, runaway crime in our cities, fentanyl in our hometowns, and economic recession looming on the horizon. In other words, there's change in the air, change for the better. Whew. And isn't that something all of us need to be reminded of? Because, I mean, this world, you listen to the wrong kind of news sources, you listen to the wrong kind of opinion pieces, you surround yourself with the wrong kind of people, you can get black-pilled like that. I mean, it's something that I fight against every single day because I want to know what's going on. I feel that, through my channel, there's times when I need to comment on what's going on, but I always want to be very solution oriented and thinking about, okay, where is there hope? How can we really turn this to our advantage? Okay, this terrible thing has happened. What can we make something good out of it? And we need this. We need that kind of voice, and we need it from people more than me, people who have bigger platforms than me. Okay, and he finishes with, and the virtues the Viking used 1,000 years ago to make themselves masters of their environment and then their world are the ones that can shape a post COVID-19, post woke future for America and for freedom around the world. Holy cow. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't this the most beautiful, encouraging thing ever? Someone, through whatever mechanism, because nothing about that article is leading me to believe that the author is pagan or has any association with paganism. Yeah, but he didn't go to the Bible or to philosophy or anything else. He said, let's look at what the Vikings did. They had something going for them. He looked at it, he analyzed their behaviors, he looked at the results, and he said, yes, there's something we can take away from that. We need to infuse our spirits with that. We may not all be Scandinavian by blood, but certainly the Scandinavian spirit is part of what shaped the American spirit, and we can draw upon that. We have that birthright as Americans. Amazing. That's exactly the kind of messaging that needs to go out. And I just want to represent what a huge win this is for us, because even though he's not looking at this through a religious pagan lens, he is acknowledging and recognizing the virtues contained within paganism. I mean, everything he talked about, you will hear that, you read it rather, in the Havamal and in other stories, and just, the general idea and way that these cultures in Northern Europe really took shape and how they conducted their affairs and why. It was get up in the morning, get your business done, take care of your family. It is up to you. People are depending on you. Your responsibilities are not these burdens to escape. They are the shaping of your character. They are what is going to define you, your legacy, how you remembered the value of your life on earth. Seize those responsibilities with both hands. Make the most of them every single day. Do something of the best with it. Oh, and hello, Marcus. We have got Marcus saying, let me show it on the screen. Vikings also created a representative democratic republic political system. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. I think that's something that also could stand to be reminded in people's minds, is that the very philosophical DNA that led us to having an American constitutional republic, the groundwork for that was laid in Norse and Germanic societies, and certainly also the Greco-Roman societies played a role in that as well. And to a certain extent, I'm not as familiar with Brennan law and what Celtic societies did, but judging from the values that are preached in the Celtic triads, which if you've never read those, I really strongly recommend them. This is all kind of saying the same thing, that responsibility and power in the political sense, it needs to be divided. You don't want to have it all in one spot. You're going to have to be different people who have different strengths and therefore going to be better at carrying out certain responsibilities. I mean, and it's the same with the gods. We are essentially mirroring our own gods. We don't have this concept of an almighty, all powerful God who's all good and he's doing all these wonderful things. No, 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 no. We have different gods who have different takes on the world. They have different strengths. They take care of different things. So, of course, that led to societies where there was some division of power. And I'm not going to say that it was, perfect. Or, I'm certainly not going to claim that what we have right now is perfect. It would be a little bit better if what was written down was what was actually practiced, but that is a conversation for another day. But essentially, I think that is the thing, is that we can look to our pagan cultures and ancestries and say they got a lot of things right. And it wasn't just the idea of individual responsibility. With that responsibility came, the right to earn property, the right, if you were going to war, whatever spoils of war you came back, that was yours. You had a share in that. You had a right to your wealth. You had a right to your property. There were certain things within the family structure. Even the way the families were conducted, everyone had their sphere of influence. Everyone had their own responsibilities to attend to, where their word was law. Certainly within the home, we point out how, in comparison with their Christian counterparts, pagan women I hate to use the word liberated because it sounds so leftist, Marxist, feminist, but they had authority. They had their proper authority. They were the ones doing the work. They were overseeing that sphere of life. Their will was law, and yes, they were cooperating with their husbands, but he wasn't meddling in her affairs. People were allowed to get on with their work and do what they were going to do without someone trying to micromanage them or try to guilt trip them into doing things their way. There was a little bit more of a natural balance. I think there's a lot of different things that our non-pagan brethren could really take from our history as well as our cultural practices. And I think that is a huge victory when people, they aren't necessarily having to say, oh well, that's a different religion, so I don't have to think about it. But when they say, oh, look at the culture that is associated with this particular religion, and look how successful it was, look how that actually was a pretty equitable way to divide labor and to conduct affairs. People understood what the rules were, people knew what their freedoms were, people knew what their responsibilities were. There was balance between the two. And when people had problems, they were not completely isolated. I mean, this is why so often you'll find in ancient societies that the worst thing that could happen to you wasn't actually being executed if you were found guilty of a crime. It was if you were made an outlaw or if you were exiled, because then you were without tribe, without family, oftentimes without a spouse, without your children. It took away your entire support system. And so I think our ancestors really set an example about how you do need your community, because you are so much better off if you have a community and if that community is also respecting the individuals within it. I mean, what is more American than that? I mean, and I think if we could just resurrect that spirit in people, I'm not saying that we'll have this sudden, huge, overnight, big pagan revival, but I do think that we end up with a much more pagan-friendly society because, let's face it, the philosophical underpinnings of Western civilization are pagan. The church came in and put a veneer on it, but every idea that actually was successful and lasted, it goes back to paganism. It just does, with the exception of the concept of an almighty monotheistic God. That is not pagan, but everything else about, oh, here's how we'll run the government, and oh, we managed to survive without being overthrown. Or the idea of more peaceful transitions of power. I mean, all of it. I mean, anything that has come out good out of Western society, it has very deep, very ancient pagan roots. I think we have a lot to be proud of. I think it is absolutely fantastic that outsiders are starting to appreciate some of those things and say, look, I can form some common ground with you. You are promoting values that I recognize and that I can see that there's a great need for in our civilization right now. I mean, just think about the concept of personal responsibility that was so important in Norse culture and still is today. If people just really took that to heart, they didn't just give lip service, but that's really how they practiced their life. That's how they conducted their affairs and took care of business. What a change that would be. How different everyone's lives would be, because you wouldn't have people, every other day saying, I've been so victimized. Everything's against me. I don't know what to do. I was never taught what to do. No, because you would have already been training your own brain and saying, I need to figure things out. And if you have a society in which people just have it drilled into their brains that they are ultimately responsible for, the shaping of their lives, and that is also going to affect how they raise their children. They're also going to be much more likely to actually have a stable relationship within to which to raise those children, because they'll be saying, okay, this is a better environment for the kids. Therefore, we need to make our relationship work. Whatever negotiation we need to do to make that happen so that the children see a cooperative and respectful and hopefully affectionate partnership. That's what we're going to do, because that's what they need to see. Marcus, let's see what's Marcus got to say. People rediscovering the benefits of plant-based healing instead of big pharma crap is on the rise big time too. Yes, it is, and I don't think that's unrelated at all. I mean, say what you will about I suppose holistic healing methods or integrated medicine. The reality is that when we are able to take in our medicines in a more natural form, something that hasn't been played around in the laboratory or mixed around in ways that it wouldn't otherwise have been, I think it's a lot more recognizable for our bodies. And if our bodies can recognize what's being given to them, then they know what to do with the nutrients and everything associated with it. There's a lot of benefits to that. And honestly, I think we will start to see a rise of people who are a little bit more aware of of what's consciously going into their diets. I mean, absolutely, sugar is a big issue. Um, that's not doing any of us very much good, but also our general passive lethargic society, that's not helping anything at all. So, I mean, and it takes small moves. I mean, you're not going to have people making major changes overnight. It's not if we want those changes to last, which personally I do. I don't want to be working or spending time on anything that does not have some kind of long term goal to it that I think will be laying a foundation for something worthwhile that can last. And I think that's also something that was kind of carved out of American culture. And I don't think that it was missing from the beginning. I think it's something that as time went on and they got separated from the founding principles and well, they became less ethical and moral people. I think people started thinking much more the short term of just what can I gain, what can I get can I get fame or fortune or preferably both for the next 5 minutes, and they're just not really concerned about anything lasting until they start realizing that their 15 minutes are coming close to up. I mean, look at the Prince Harry's and Meghan Markles of the world. Woo-hoo-hoo. They've had their public hissy fits, haven't they, gang? They've done all sorts of stuff and they've let everyone know just how hard their life is. But their time is growing short. People are a little bored. They're never going to have anything else more interesting to say. And so everything they were hoping to achieve and destabilize the royal family and, create an uproar and disruptions and everything else, that's going to have its season and then it will go. And no one will remember them as being anything other than spoiled brats who didn't know when they had it good. They did not think long term. A lot of people in America are not thinking long term, but hopefully this is the start of that changing. People seeing what is actually going to work, what will promote their welfare, and how we're actually going to be happier in the end. How are we going to be more content? What are we actually striving for? Are we striving for, the gigantic house and the boat and the personal plane and all these other things? Are we doing that because we actually want any of those things or because we want to be involved in fields that would allow for the financial resources for those things? Or are we doing it because someone told us that's what happiness was and that's what success looked like? What about the success of raising your kids to where they're decent human beings? I'd like to see people promote that kind of success. What about the success of people who got married and then they stayed married for 50 years, that actually was till death did they part? What about that kind of success? What about the success of people actually growing up? We have a deeply immature society. I mean, we don't just have Peter Pan syndrome. We have it entrenched in people's DNA, who they don't want responsibility. They don't want to ever become. They don't want to make choices. They don't want to be the ones who have to face the music. What if we got rid of that and we started having people who are like, okay, what is actually going to make me satisfied in life? Maybe it isn't about, mindlessness. Maybe it isn't about trends and fads, as Marcus just mentioned in the live comments. What if we just kind of embraced the reality and said, what, reality is not this big, scary, oppressive thing that I thought it was. Maybe reality is actually good for me. Maybe reality is actually a happy thing. Maybe reality and the embrace of it is the only way I'm going to ever be truly successful, to where the only way I'm going to actually fully develop my talents and my potential and actually make something of it. Maybe, just maybe, we're getting ready to give reality another try. I wonder if, in addition to the rediscovery of Viking virtues, if we also rediscover the philosophies of Ayn Rand. She's someone who escaped the Soviet Russia. Back in, I think she came to the States in the 1920s ish, I think. Don't quite quote me on that. Definitely fact check me on that. We do not trust my memory around here. But she got it on a lot of levels. Now, there were things she definitely missed the boat on, but the things where she was right, she was really, really right. Maybe we'll have a rediscovery of that, because she was also very big on this idea of existence exists. Reality is what it is. It is neither trying to help you or harm you. It simply is the natural order. And that's where we're going. People are starting to re-embrace the natural order, and that means really good things for all of us. I mean, not pagans especially, but honestly, there's going to be benefits for everyone. So I'm super excited. I think this is a hell of a good, happy thought to take into the new year. Thank you, everybody, for joining me again. If you haven't signed up for Druid Foxx's blog, The Druid's Den, you can follow it, and there's a link to it in the description box below. There's also a link for the Gilded group where you can meet her, the other content creators that have graced Blackbird's Brew with their presence, get to know them, as well as the other membership. We have interesting conversations. Marcus, who's been keeping me company in the comments here, he and I, we've had some really fantastic conversations, and we're working on a little project together. So stay tuned for January, because I do hope that does come to fruition. But the point is that once you actually start getting to know people and talking to your fellow pagans, you get a lot of benefits from it. And while this online community, it doesn't serve the same purpose as face to face. Let's use this tool for what it is. Let's make the most of this band aid, and until we can gradually work for better things. So thank you all for joining me. See you later. Come see me on Gilded.